Well, we're nearly at the end of the year, 2023. And what a year it's been. For me, it's been full of, oh, isn't something supposed to happen about now? Oh no, oh, that didn't happen. Is it going to happen now? Oh, will this event take place? Are they going to shut this down? Oh, blimey, look at the sky. Lots of aeroplanes with their very strange trail. Look at those patterns over there. Is it safe to drink the water? What's this book all about? Oh my goodness. Hey, there's a rabbit hole to go down. Blimey, what, you want me to talk and have a chat about a few things and present things to a live audience? Oh my goodness, what shall I say? It's been a bit like that this year, but in between making the videos and interviewing some amazing people and answering copious amounts of letters to my best ability and filling up the old noggin with as much information as I can retain, and a lot of it spilling out onto the floor and going, oh blimey, I forgot about that. I must try and remember these things, and trying to get organised and understanding what weird things are happening in this world. Apart from all of that, in some of the downtime that I've managed to have when I spend evenings in my kitchen in front of the fire, which I'm hoping they will not take away from me, because fire is just so primeval and part of man's existence, and it's so good to not have a television and just look at the flames. It's flaming better than the TV, I can tell you. And also burning candles, which is what I do love to do, and a bit of candle gazing as well. Apart from all of those things, I've been doing a lot of reading, and sometimes you see bits in my house where you see I've got quite a lot of books. I love reading. Reading is fantastic. Not so much the modern history books. I used to like the older history books, but now we know that so much of history is actually inverted. The things that we've been told at school or what you see on the programmable box in the corner is not quite what the real truth is. And we're all scratching our heads and pulling out our hair, if you've got any, about what is really true and what was just fake and what was useful for the other side to keep us distracted on this and that and the other. Anyway, what I do like to do is to read. And one of the books that I've been reading, I saw this by chance on one of those online retailers, you know the sort, and I thought I will buy it. And I've been fascinated with England for a long, long time. Of course, I am an Englishman. I've been born here, and I have seen over the years, and I've talked about this, and when I used to go out and about on the walks, and the previous version of this channel, which was the Bald Explorer. And you can go back and see my back catalogue, which for about 6 years I was wandering around looking at churches and manor houses and beautiful landscapes, looking at the streams and the bridges and the artifices, the artifacts even, that you find in the landscape, visiting old villages and towns and places of interest where castles were and mottes and baileys, and all of that fascination of understanding the place that I was born into, this land that I find fascinating and lovely. And part of it also was this very much soul searching about something that was inside me, that when I go around now and I look outside and I walk about and I see the strange mean architecture with the minuscule windows and bereft of beauty, no aesthetics whatsoever, compared to perhaps in the older days of the Georgian period, the Elizabethan period, even the Victorian period, and before, and of course in the medieval periods in which you see these amazing ecclesiastical buildings with these incredible carvings and great swathes of architecture and domed roofs and all of that, the perpendicular period and the English period, you know, all of the architecture which was there to inspire and make you feel, I don't know, proud to be part of it and connected to it. And of course I know that a lot of people lived in hovels, but they would have that church as the main meeting place, and those beautiful timber-framed inns that they would meet and talk and put the world to rights and laugh and gather round perhaps a piano or a musical instrument, and just carouse and enjoy themselves. And then you go around, as I say now, and you look and you see what bleak, bland, boring, utilitarian place that we live in today. And we've lost something. We really have lost something. And people seem, as they walk about, just bereft of this beauty and aesthetics which lifts the spirits. They don't even know anymore what it is they've lost. Well, one book was this book called The Lost Village by a chap called Richard Asquith, who I have to say writes beautifully. He travelled around England, and like me, he had in his heart the sense that there was something missing, that there was something dying, that was draining away as we moved on in the last 80 years. And he's true and he's right, there has been. He lived in a village, and he hadn't really noticed it before, that village life had become sterile, that the whole purpose of a village had lost its meaning. You know, the farm, which would have been the main employer, possibly the nearby landowner, the squire, the church, the pub, the school, these sort of main ingredients of what life in the villages would have been. And of course, over time, particularly from the 40s upwards, that last 80 years in which big corporations have taken over, people have moved even more into the cities, machinery and technology has reduced the workforce on the farms, and the need for the small butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, these supportive industries, the wheelwright, the blacksmith, have gone, and we've got into this industrial age, and we're heading now, of course, into the next, the digital industrial age, which will cast away even more of the smaller industries. And that's something that many of us are fighting against as we begin to awaken to this concept of a digital world with digital IDs and CBDCs and surveillance and the whole attitude that we're guilty first before, and we have to prove ourselves innocent. This very strange dead entity world of corporate Britain here and across the world, various corporations that seem to be employing everybody and giving them their ethos and their culture. And yet, as Richard Asquith has found, going around, there were people in their late 70s and 80s and even in their 90s who still remember those villages that had life in them, what it was to not have to have locks on the door, that you, while you were poorer, you were busy and you had a more rewarding life. You did things with your hands. You knew everybody in the village. There was so much celebration. Everything had meaning. You may not have travelled terribly far, but you were with the landscape. You were growing your own food. You were part of the whole ethos and the morals of the village. You attended church, you listened to the sermons, you went about your business, and you sat in the pub with the others and you drank the local beers. You helped the farmers with their local produce during the haymaking or the harvest. And it was good, honourable, honest work. And everybody pulled together for the common good. And as I've read in many other books about the times when electricity came in for the first time and people were a bit confused and bemuddled by what this would mean, sitting there with an electric lamp, which may only have been 30 watts, and comparing it to perhaps candles or a paraffin lamp or some other form of lantern that was lighting their ways, and being slightly confused. And I know now that I, here with the lovely Julia in the evenings, we turn the electricity off and we have candlelight, and I look into the fire, and I get back to, instead of having that electronic flickering at whatever number of ratio that it is, the vibration that is actually not very good for you with all that dirty electricity, and you've got decent, good old-fashioned candles lighting a certain dimness of the room, but it's beautiful, it's rewarding, it's calming, and it seems to me, as far as I'm concerned, it's good for me. Well, Richard Asquith goes around, as I say, he goes to various villages, and he can see that although some villages with their very big expensive cars and their nice white picket fences and their big gates and tarmac on the frontage and the thatch looking immaculate, and people who can afford to live there, who've come from the towns and the cities, who've made their money and are perhaps retiring, and you find that these have become ghettos of retired people or rich people who may talk to each other perhaps on a village internet, or perhaps meet occasionally, but the meaning of that village, the reason in which people came to live in a village in the very first place, where they were all connected for the common good for each other, where rich and poor would rub shoulders with one another, and where, as I say, there was a sort of moral, and everybody knew their place. And I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. There were poor people and rich things. And of course, life was hard and people were cold, but there seems to be, from what he says in his book, going around the countryside, a feeling that even though we've got a better life and that we've given away so much of the responsibility to councils, to government, to technology, that actually there was something more rewarding about living through those hardships, through those difficult times, and making things with our hands and sharing the triumphs, the celebrations with those other people around us. Well, it's a fascinating book, and I recommend it if you want to have a look back to see the sort of things that we used to have. It was published originally in 2008, so it is an older book, In Search of a Forgotten Rural England. The last chapter for me, however, was disappointing, because I felt that Richard, and I would love to interview him on the show about his experiences going around, but it was disappointing because he almost then, and he kind of had to, accepts the modern village that we have and says there is no going back. But he was very praiseworthy of what he had, the view from the garden and the village and the scenery that he has, not really acknowledging, I don't think, the chances are that his backyard, not his literal backyard, but the fields beyond, will probably be built up on with boring, boxy, mean-looking houses, a 15-minute city ghetto in which there's no gardens and nobody runs around outside, and that people are inside, fermenting behind their screens and living lives in computer games and 2D reality. And I found that disappointing. But as I do like to look on the positive side of life, I think, and I really mean this with my heart, that we are in a transformation at this very moment. I think there is a new earth approaching. There is the old. We haven't quite, some of us, have retained to the baby, and we haven't thrown it out with the bathwater. We know what the meaning of life is. We understand the pride, the satisfaction of doing things for ourselves, of being responsible, of creating something, and not offloading it to some professional, a professional film to keep us entertained and program us, or singers that are showing us in a professional way that we want to do things and become more involved with one another and more involved with the countryside and nature and the soil and growing things ourselves, in building and learning. I think we are at a very important point where, and I've said this of course before, and I believe that next year is going to be very much a big revealing to us. There's going to be hardships, I know, and we will see influences from the stars and space and the sun particularly. We will be challenged on the internet and the electric power that we're all being forced into having. Many of us will be opening our eyes, and many more will be awakening to the great harm that has been played upon us. And they will be pushed back as people start to actually realize what is in our soul, who we really are as spiritual beings, and really what we want from life and how to live. And I think that some of the past's wonders and beauties and understanding and simple way of life will be permeating its way into this life. That the penal system that we have, in which we're entrapped and having to pay bills left, right and centre, and working so hard for corporations, those dead entities, I think that is over. They've had their day. And we will once again, the small run businesses, the entrepreneurs, the small sole traders, the people who will be gathering together and working with animals, with plants, with the soil, with in the fresh air, with their hands and their bodies and their skills. Many people will be turning away from that, oh, I can be a transhuman supercomputer with a chip in my head, or all these Fitbits and various bits of technology which are taking away the true nature of who and what we are. And I really believe that we will see maybe a divide in the people. Some will carry on in that dead, boring way that carries on because they perhaps have been too far programmed. But many of us are waking up to who we really are, and that we'll be walking tall with each other and laughing and joking and free. And I think next year is a time we will see all of this coming together for the good.